Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to the Bay Area restaurant scene with a shot at the Thai sesame noodles found at Monkey Thai in Alameda, California. Now, as some of you are likely aware, we have now done a wide array of both Thai noodle dishes as well as sesame noodle dishes, and for what it's worth, I also don't think that there's anything particularly unique about most of the dishes that come from Monkey Thai. It is pretty straightforward Thai takeout that I order from all of the time because the food quality is consistent and it hits the spot when you're craving some Thai noodles. That said though, what does stand out to me on their menu here is that this is the first time that I have come across a sesame noodle dish in Thai cuisine. In a few of our past attempts, we have done a fried shallot sesame dan dan mian, as well as a peanut butter based dan dan mian noodle, both of which are firmly rooted in Sichuan cuisine. This means that in order to create our Thai sesame noodles today, we're going to be borrowing a few elements that come from Chinese cuisine, including some black vinegar, dark soy sauce, and oyster sauce, and then pairing it with a number of classic Thai elements as well. Today that's going to be some fresh rice noodles, Thai chilies, and sambal oelek. Finally, rounding this all out, we'll also be adding some wok seared chicken thigh for our protein element, effectively meaning that we're essentially making a pad kimao but tossing it in a Szechuan dandan mian sauce base, which is awesome. Okay, so let's get into it.
Tastes like strawberries on a summer evening, and it sounds just like a song. I want more berries and that summer feeling.
Okay, so diving right in. Whoa, what's going on? There, that's better. Okay, so diving right in, I'm starting off with my aromatic elements for our wok fry later on. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. This is going to give our wok fry a nice fragrant base of aromatics as we start building out layers of umami here. Then next is about 5 Thai chilies, which I'm destemming and slicing thinly for a medium level of heat. Now, to me, this is going to be pretty much the most iconically Thai element in our noodles today, which makes them fairly essential. But if you are averse to spicy stuff though, you can either leave these out entirely or go with a more mild chili like a jalapeno or Fresno chili instead. Then rounding out our veggies is going to be half of a medium white onion. Today seems as good a time as any to mention that when you peel your onions, we want to take off both the first thin layer as well as the second layer of onion too, and yes, that would be this part right here. The second layer is going to be a little bit chewy once it's fried, so you want to make sure to get that stuff pulled off before you start slicing the onion, Wesley. Next up, I'm whisking up 4 eggs to combine, which we'll be adding in at the very end for a nice egg coating to our noodles, which we're diving into next here. Now, what we have here are some fresh rice noodles, which are absolutely the best choice for Thai noodle dishes like this one. These are going to be thinner and more delicate than the dried stuff and will absolutely elevate your finished dish quite a bit. They are also quite perishable though, so unless you are able to get your hands on this stuff the same day that you plan on cooking them, I would go with dried rice noodles, which are pantry stable. For these fresh noodles today though, since they are so delicate, I'm starting off by painstakingly pulling these apart 1 noodle at a time so that we don't find ourselves trying to separate these noodles on heat, which is how you end up with a bunch of broken rice noodles in your wok. Not very fun. Once these are nice and separated, I'm setting these aside while we dive into our chicken next. Today we're going with some chicken thigh, which is going to play nicely with the sear later on thanks to the extra fat that will be included. I'm going with a fairly small chop here, about a 1/4 inch or so per piece. The delicate nature of those rice noodles are going to benefit from a smaller piece of chicken for a more even bite on the plate. Finally, I'm rounding this all out with a pretty simple marinade, most of which is meant to aid in our wok sear later on. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by half a teaspoon of white pepper, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce to add a bit of sugar to that sear, and finally half a teaspoon of cornstarch to keep things tender during that wok fry as well. Finally, I'm mixing this all up to combine, and then we're setting this aside while we dive into our sauce next. Alright, so moving on to our sauce here, I'm starting things off with a baseline of 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, then bringing back once again my 3 favorite ingredients for rich and deep umami qualities. This is a tablespoon each of dark soy sauce, black vinegar, and oyster sauce. You'll recognize this as the combination that comes up in a lot of our richer sauce bases like pad ki mao, pad see ew, chow niangao, lion's head meatballs, and a whole bunch of other dishes as well. Rounding this out, I'm adding in a single tablespoon of sambal oelek to bring that heat from our chilies to life, followed by a single tablespoon of brown sugar. Then finally, as promised, since it is in the name, this is 4 tablespoons or a quarter cup of sesame paste, which as you'll notice, is quite thick, not unlike the texture of peanut butter. So I'm whisking this stuff up to combine very thoroughly and stopping to add just a touch of water to help break things up until a nice thick and creamy sauce starts to form. Finally, I'm setting this all aside for a moment while we head over to the stove to get started on our chicken next. Over on the stove, I've got my wok heating up as hot as possible, and then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil and, as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Then going in here first is my chicken, which, as a reminder, contains more than a little liquid in that marinade, so add this in carefully because you're definitely going to incite some oil splatter here. I'm spreading this out evenly in the wok and giving it 2.5 minutes of undisturbed time on heat to develop a nice crisp sear before tossing and doing my very best to get some wok hei going. Then I'm briefly tossing this until our chicken is cooked through, and then removing those chicken solids so that we may make use of this glorious fond left behind. I'm adding in my sauce here and then deglazing with about a quarter cup of water so that we may incorporate that fond into our sauce base. Then I'm letting this all reduce and simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes until a thick and creamy sauce forms, and then removing from my wok, wiping down and reheating one more time for our third and final batch cook. This is another 4 tablespoons of peanut oil going in, followed by my aromatic garlic, ginger, and Thai chilies. I'm blooming these for about 15 seconds until nice and fragrant before adding in my onions and a few handfuls of bean sprouts to round out my veggie element. We're giving this all a quick toss to combine before adding my chicken back to the wok. Then I'm adding my noodles and sauce in batches here and stopping to very gently toss in between each batch. This is not only going to help us get a nice even coating of sauce on our noodles here, but will also help make sure that we don't break apart any of those rice noodles that we just painstakingly pulled apart too. Finally, once all of my noodles and sauce are incorporated, I'm adding in my eggs around the rim of the wok and giving these about 30 seconds to set before tossing one more time. Then we're removing this all from heat and we're ready to eat. Okay, so if you're thinking, woo, this looks a lot like a pad see ew / pad ki mao / drunken noodle / pad thai, isn't this basically the same thing? Isn't woo your last name? Why do people keep calling you that? Then yes, you are absolutely right. As I mentioned earlier, what we essentially just did is created a classic Thai noodle dish and then added a sesame paste sauce inspired by our Sichuan dandan mians and finished it off with a classic Thai noodle egg coating. The result is not too dissimilar from a pad ki mao, with the exception that the sauce is a lot thicker and creamier than any Thai noodle dish that I have come across. The dark soy sauce, oyster sauce, and black vinegar give our dish a deeply rich umami quality that I think pairs really nicely with the rich and creamy texture of our sesame paste. Then our sambal oelek and Thai chilies add a nice subtle but lingering heat element to bring everything to life without becoming overwhelmingly spicy. Finally, those who have been watching for a while are almost certainly all too familiar with my lifelong struggle with fresh rice noodles, which are frustratingly perishable and delicate. So make no mistake, if this bit crashes and burns in your own attempts, just know that you are not alone, my friend, and we will get through this together. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series dedicated to dishes from the Bay Area restaurant scene, so definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet, because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, Monkey Thai is located in Alameda off of Main Street and is one of my favorite spots for Thai takeout, so definitely check them out next if you haven't yet. Also, if you are located here in the Bay Area, the Woo Can Cook pop-up is back at Oakland first Friday next month, so come by and say hi if you can. More about that at woocancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
I don't know if I could ever go the strawberries on a summer evening.